Do you have a suggestion for a Rockstar Impact Podcast guest? Go to impactpodcast.com and just click Be a Guest to recommend someone today. This edition of the Impact Podcast is brought to you by ERI. ERI has a mission to protect people, the planet, and your privacy, and is the largest fully integrated IT and electronics asset disposition provider and cybersecurity-focused hardware destruction company in the United States, and maybe even the world. For more information on how ERI can help your business properly dispose of outdated electronic hardware devices, please visit eridirect.com. This episode of the Impact Podcast is brought to you by Closed Loop Partners. Closed Loop Partners is a leading circular economy investor in the United States with an extensive network of Fortune 500 corporate investors, family offices, institutional investors, industry experts, and impact partners. Closed Loop's platform spans the arc of capital from venture capital to private equity, bridging gaps and fostering synergies to scale the circular economy. To find Closed Loop Partners, please go to www.closedlooppartners.com. Welcome to another edition of the Impact Podcast. I'm John Shigeri, and I'm so excited to have with us today Cami Hoskins. She's the Director of Legal Operations and Training and the Head of Corporate Sustainability and ESG at GoDaddy. Welcome to the Impact Podcast, Cami.
Thank you, John, so much for that warm welcome. I am so excited to be here.
We're excited to have you, and we're going to get into all the important and impactful things you're doing at GoDaddy with your colleagues. But before we go into that important information, I want to know a little bit about the Cami Hoskins story. Where did you grow up, and how did you even get on this path to become a lawyer and eventually go into this new industry of sustainability and ESG and everything else that we're going to talk about today?
Well, thank you for the opportunity to share that. I am a Phoenix, Arizona native, so born and raised. Yeah. My father's family came from Alabama and my mother's family came from Washington State by way of Minnesota. And they met each other in the healthcare industry and planted our family's roots here in Phoenix. And I have always been a lover of words and language. So in my undergraduate degree, I studied English and communication. I minored in Spanish. And then spent some time working in industry and got candidly a little bit bored. And so went back to school and got a master's degree in intercultural communication and rhetoric. And that was two of the most fun years of my life, just waxing philosophical with brilliant minds about topics related to intercultural dynamics, diversity and inclusion. But I got to end that program and I asked myself, now what? What am I going to do with this? It's great. It's really fun. Lots of great ideas and concepts. So I ended up applying both for PhD and for JD programs. And I was accepted into both PhD and JD programs, but decided to go the JD route because I've been a lifelong volunteer and I really wanted to apply my skill sets more sort of tactically in the community. And I thought that the JD route would give me that opportunity. So I went to law school and studied hard down at the University of Arizona. And when I came out of law school, it was when the economy was at a very low point. And so I was with a private law firm and they said, here's your bankruptcy code, Cami, you're going to be a bankruptcy lawyer. And at first I was like, but then I became kind of this huge bankruptcy nerd and really ended up enjoying it because the complexity of the cases and just working with the colleagues in the bar. And so I spent 12 years in private practice, and my practice areas, like I said, were bankruptcy, but also employment law and commercial litigation. And the opportunity presented itself to join GoDaddy about 3 years ago. And really, they were looking to help with their legal training. So compliance trainings, that kind of thing. And I thought, you know what, it's great. Let's do it. Bit of an in-house law professor of sorts is kind of how I saw myself. And then our new CLO joined and she asked me to stand up a legal operations team, and then had an opportunity because the former head of our ESG team moved on to a new opportunity. She asked me to help out, and I have been helping out with ESG for about a year, and just actually have been delighted to discover that it's this strange, perfect opportunity that meets all of my various interests within one field. And so I did, I took on the responsibility to help out the company and the team, but have been really excited by the potential that this field really offers.
That's wonderful. Wow. And we get to meet, because of this show over the last 16 years, we get to meet so many fascinating and wonderful people doing very important work in the field of ESG and sustainability. But that's a whole new road, how you came through the law, but also with your other formal educational training. It's like you said, it's all merged together now in this role. This is a very important role you have at GoDaddy. So before you, was there a chief sustainability officer or somebody else in the role heading up corporate sustainability and ESG at GoDaddy?
Yeah, for sure. We had a very talented person. Her title was senior director. So she led the team for several years.
Got it. Okay. So now so now you have these very interesting hats that you're wearing. Still director of legal operations and training. So you have your law professorship hat on there, but then also the head of corporate sustainability and ESG, which can be very wide and very narrow. So talk a little bit about a day in the life of Cami Hoskins at GoDaddy, and how do you divide in your day, and how big are your teams on both sides, on the legal side and on the corporate sustainability and ESG side? How big are the teams that help you do this important work?
It's a great question. So organization is my key to success. I have some colleagues who will always remind me of how organized I appear, which is very flattering. But on the legal operations side, I have one person in addition to myself that helps our chief legal officer run the business of the department. So we really focus on like technology tools and processes and improving the efficiency of our team's work. And then on the sustainability side, there's 5 of us in total. And I have to say, the reason why I'm able to do or wear so many hats is because of the phenomenal people on my team. They're just tremendous human beings, but also really dedicated professionals. And so a day in the life is really just having engaged conversations with them, problem solving, thinking through strategy, and just listening really closely and helping make good decisions.
So, I know you released your sustainability and diversity report in April or so of this year. Talk a little bit about some of the greatest hits or highlights from that report that you're the most proud of.
Absolutely. So obviously we're making tremendous progress on our greenhouse gas reduction goals. So we reduced by 35% since our baseline in 2019, and continuing to make good progress. And then also, I love how we're able to highlight the tremendous work of our signature social impact program, which is called Empowered by GoDaddy. And that's, we can talk more about that if you like, but to me, it's really the shining star in terms of the way that we show up in the corporate sustainability world. And then I just also like how we've focused on the success of really supporting our employees, and how I also think that's a huge opportunity or a huge place where GoDaddy shines, especially compared to some other employers, is just really investing in the talent that we have and creating an environment where people can really bring their whole selves to work.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit. The Empowered by GoDaddy program. What I got excited about having you on, Cami, today is, first of all, GoDaddy is almost nowadays the first step towards living the American dream of being the entrepreneur, the innovator, etc. Having your own website around your vision or your business and getting it from GoDaddy. I remember back to 98 when I first got in the internet business. I remember going to, GoDaddy was the place. And so to talk a little bit about the Empower by GoDaddy program and why that's been around since 2017 and why that's so important to, inclusion, diversity, and also the service to the underserved or historically marginalized communities across this country.
Absolutely. So, like you said, we've been working on this program since 2017. And what we do with Empower by GoDaddy is partner with local nonprofit organizations across the US, Europe, and Canada. And those nonprofits are embedded in communities and are able to reach the communities of entrepreneurs that we're really hoping to serve. And through that partnership, we really hope to level up these entrepreneurs through knowledge, really. Like it's just, I think often about how there are gatekeepers in our society for knowledge. And if you're not on the right side of the gate, then you don't get access to the information. And so a huge part of what we do with Empower is to open the gate, the floodgate to information about, like you just said, getting online, building your business, building your brand. And so we do that through three real main pillars through Empower. So it's the information sharing or training through courses. It's also networking. So I think that's another huge and important way for knowledge sharing is to network with other like-minded entrepreneurs. And then finally, it's through mentorship. So we really work with nonprofits that can help have that sort of one-on-one coaching conversation with these entrepreneurs to help invest in them to level them up in their journey.
That's so exciting. And there's real stats that back what's the evolution of what's happening and the importance of your the Empower by GoDaddy. Can you talk a little bit about woman owners and then also then African American owners and African American women owners pre-pandemic, post-pandemic, how those numbers have grown and why the importance, the real true importance of the Empower by GoDaddy and the proof that it's working?
Absolutely. So there's been a tremendous increase in all of those communities, like you just said. And in fact, Black women entrepreneurs are the fastest growing segment of entrepreneurs within the United States. And that definitely has accelerated post-pandemic, post-2020. And so it's absolutely needing to meet the moment and make sure that they and other communities who are underserved have the access to resources to really be successful in their ventures.
Got it. Let's step back and go back to the two big hats that you wear, Director of Legal Operations, but also Head of Corporate Sustainability and ESG. Cami, as you and I know, this whole industry of sustainability is relatively new. 20 years ago or so, when I got in the recycling industry, there were no chief sustainability officers. And even post Inconvenient Truth, we had a little bit and push forward for sustainability in America. But then when the 2008 financial crisis hit, it sort of then petered out again. It seems as though within the last 2 or 3 years, with Larry Fink and BlackRock leading the way, with regards to this whole terminology of ESG and people not only talking a good talk and corporations and organizations not only talking good talk, but walking the walk, that sustainability and the shift from the linear to circular economy and the need for real ESG results is here to stay. But there's also been a politicization of this terminology ESG. Let's first break it down and understand. You can make corporate sustainability and ESG as wide as you want or as narrow as you want. How do you and your team approach trying to understand what's the most important issues for GoDaddy besides the core mission of being a good and profitable business, which you are, but in terms of what you want to accomplish in terms of net zero, planet positivity, and all the other important sustainability trends that seem to be out there today?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's very easy to get overwhelmed with the alphabet soup and like the various like interests and pressures. And so we really are focused on all three of the tenets of ESG, so environmental, social, and governance.
Right.
And what we have a materiality analysis that we did a couple of years ago. And so using that as a guide for what's important to our stakeholders and being sure that we're being responsive to those individuals' needs. So we focus on our customers, our employees, and our operations. And so it's really important to us, in addition to the investors that are paying close attention, that our employees feel good about where they're working. And I think so that's a huge part of that conversation. And so I think, like I said, Empower is an awesome opportunity to showcase that the S within the ESG. And then in terms of our goals, like I said, we set scope 1 and scope 2, and we're making awesome progress towards that. And we continue to stay really close to that and continue to think about what our go forward strategy is to make sure that we're showing up correctly within the environment. And also with respect to the pressures that we're seeing, just from the regulatory landscape and being sure that we're staying in front of that.
Yeah. Talk a little bit about inclusivity and a workplace culture. I'm 60 years old now, Cammie, and I grew up in Queens, New York, in one of the first integrated public schools. And New York itself is a melting pot and a diverse place to grow up in terms of race, ethnicity, color, everything. It all comes together. So to me, that was just my normal growing up. But I've had the absolute honor and pleasure to interview on this show Martin Luther King III, and we've talked about, although we've come far, we really haven't come far enough, and we still see that. Obviously, during the pandemic, it was on it was for the world to see. The tragedy in Minnesota, obviously, and still the ongoing ethnic divides and racial divides that we have. How do you, or can you share some of your best strategies and trainings that you've learned along the way to really foster inclusivity and diversity in the GoDaddy workplace?
Absolutely. So I actually have been obsessed with social justice and diversity for decades. So I actually started in that work when I was a sophomore in college and was involved in a leadership program for social justice. And so I really, at a very young age, started to understand what it is that causes people to have those disconnects on various social identities. And so I have really, I think, been able to benefit from that early exposure to those concepts. And so I've used that throughout my career, and I've been a proponent and advocate for that work throughout my career. So I do a lot of training around diversity and inclusion. I've done it within GoDaddy, but I also do it for outside organizations, and did that in private practices, for my clients. So I would train employees about these concepts. And so it's like one of my favorite things to do is to talk to people about these concepts. And I think really what we need is more like reasonable, rational conversations, but with a framework about why we do what we do. I think that that's what's missing from so many conversations. And so whenever I train folks on these topics, I really try to embed the conversation in theory. So human communication theory in particular, and help them see how the scholarship out there has helped us understand sort of why humans do what we do. And then based sort of that information, making better decisions that are less exclusionary, less discriminatory, more inclusive. And I can't stop having those conversations because it's always just this light bulb aha moment when people come to see that like our brains are almost hardwired to organize people into groups and then to put value attributes to those groups and then to fail to see ourselves in that other group. And then all of the complications that flow from there. So yeah, and that's my background in terms of my ethic and how I approach diversity and equity and inclusion training. And then I can certainly talk more about how that shows up at GoDaddy if you like.
I'd love you to continue that in terms of you framed up the macro beautifully. Let's talk about the micro now. What's how you bring all of your great experience and your love for the topic and your ability to train on that topic to GoDaddy, and how's that played out there?
So it takes a village, as they say. So we have very talented leaders in DEIB, but that's what we focus on here in GoDaddy. And then it's really it's a fabric of our company. It truly is. So prior to joining GoDaddy, I was in private practice with law firms. So there's a specific culture of certain law firms. But when I joined GoDaddy, it was like this tremendous breath of fresh air where I truly felt I could bring my whole self to work and also be valued for my contributions in a way that I'm not going to disparage my former employers, but it was a palpable difference when I joined the company. And so to me, the way that shows up is not just in training, but we do take training very seriously. So we train on compliance topics like anti-discrimination, anti-harassment, or code of conduct. But we're also really clear to make sure that employees understand that we don't retaliate. So we want people to come forward and to share the concerns if they do feel like something is not going as they would like within the company, that they need to let us know so that we can investigate and address their concerns. So creating that culture, like that open door culture, that willingness to be like comfortable to speak up, I think is a huge factor in our success. And we're very careful about protecting that. And we're also, I think, extremely proud with the results for how that shows up. So we survey our employees on an annual basis and just do a temperature check on a number of things. But in particular, we ask them how they feel about like coming to work every day. We ask them how they feel about how their interactions with their colleagues are. And so we have incredibly high response rates to those surveys. So 86% of our employees participated last year. Wow. 90% of those employees said that they feel like they have positive, they can be themselves at work. And then 84% of those employees said that they feel like their colleagues treat them with respect. Those are tremendous numbers. Like that is just like, we're a global company. We have a very diverse workforce. And the fact that so many of us do feel similar to me, that we can be our full selves, I think is just tremendous. So a lot of that is just those micro moments, leaning into those conversations. We empower our managers to have conversations where employees can bring their concerns forward and feel heard and validated, and just creating that environment of it's like an ethic of kindness and a human first approach, which I think is just, it's very palpable.
I love that. I want to come back to that in a second. But first, for our listeners and viewers who just joined us, we've got Cami Hoskins with us today. She's Director of Legal Operations and Training and the Head of Corporate Sustainability and ESG at GoDaddy. To find Cami and her colleagues and all the important work they're doing, please go to www.godaddy.com. You could also go to www.godaddy.com/GoDaddy for good to learn more about all the great things that Cami and her team are doing at GoDaddy.com. Cami, let's go a little bit further, though, with regards to what you were just talking about. Post-COVID, you have this trend of people wanting to work at home. Now, how does it work at GoDaddy? Does everyone or do most of the employees sit under one roof, or is it a very dispersed workforce, and do a lot of people post-COVID work from home? And is it harder to get them to engage in the in the whole cultural aspect and creating how do we say it the right way, a harmonized culture that you're aiming for at GoDaddy post-COVID? Or have you found a way to work around some of these new trends as well?
So we are still predominantly working from home, the vast majority of our employees across the globe. So wow. we do have office locations in several locations across the globe. And it's, for most of us, it's a voluntary opportunity to come in whenever we want. So it absolutely, like other employers with those challenges, it's definitely required us to pivot. And so I think I'm heartened by our statistics from our survey last year, that despite the fact that we're still all dispersed and working from home, so many of us are still feeling switched on and engaged, I think is great. But it's absolutely required, like I said, the pivot. So we're a very Slack-heavy organization, and we are a very camera-on organization, which I think makes a big difference. I think there are some employers where employees maybe are Zoom or like Teams-based, but they don't like have cameras on. And so it's, for many parts of our company, it's sort of just the expectation, and it still feels like that engaged moment and conversation. It's not at all the same, right? Like it's going into the office and being together. So then we also work to create those moments where possible, where we have a large number of employees within, a certain geographic location and an office available. We are working on getting them together and continuing that good energy.
And in order of magnitude, approximately how many employees does GoDaddy have?
I think we're close to, I want to say 8,000 or more.
Wow.
Yeah,
it's a lot.
I could be correct. It's a lot. Yeah, we do have a lot of employees.
Right.
We are dispersed.
Yeah, and so let's switch now and go over to a little bit of the sustainability side of the ESG and the environmental side of that. How do you get informed? You have such a fascinating and wonderful background. that informs you legally, culturally, ethnically, racially, from your love for the topics and your studies in the topics. How did you get your learning curve down in terms of the environmental sustainability world, and where do you draw inspiration from currently to keep you on top of whatever the latest trends are, so you keep GoDaddy ahead of everybody else?
Yeah, so I've always been a lover of our planet. So that has been another opportunity to explore more how to help us as a company continue to keep this planet healthy and strong. So it's absolutely been a learning curve. But the good thing is I've learned over my career how to teach myself different topics and just different concepts of law. That's one of the things law school does really well, is teach us how to teach ourselves. So when I started the seat being the head of our corporate sustainability and ESG team, that was obviously the first topic for me to start my research. So just doing a lot of reading and conversations. We have a very talented ESG manager who I'm very proud to work with, who is very strong in greenhouse gas accounting, and she has a master's degree in environmental related issues. So we definitely have that strength with the team. And so, yeah, it's just been continuing to just teach myself, get up to speed, join organizations, listening to webinars, having conversations. So the interesting thing is, it seems like it's an ever-changing area too. Right. So it's always going to require education and continued learning.
I mean, you and I are sitting, in our respective cities. You in Phoenix, I'm in Fresno. This is first of all, in terms of the world, the hottest recorded temperatures ever in world history. But I think also between Phoenix and Fresno, we live in two of the hottest cities. I mean, I think you have us beat right now. You just went through a very, very hot July. Where do you personally feel, hopeful that we can turn this thing around and that we can heal the environment that we've done, a big number on over the years through the Industrial Revolution and through time and history? We need to really work on healing the environment. Where do you find the glimmers of hope, and what gets you excited every day to go and do the important work that you and your colleagues are doing at GoDaddy with regards to decarbonization and net zero and other environmental issues that are part of your mission?
So we don't believe we've committed to net zero just yet, but we definitely are committed to greenhouse gas reduction and making tremendous progress towards our goal. But my inspiration comes from, I think, the fact that it is such a growing area. And, I just had a conversation last weekend in my hair salon. And I know that's sort of like I like that. Like a pulse on what's going on in society for me every time I go. And I sort of hear what's top of mind. And the environment came up, and it's like people are really having these conversations with each other now about how we individually impact this world that we all live in, and the choices that we're being asked to make, and asking questions about why are people so concerned about it. I had to have the conversation that it might feel like a recent issue for you, but these are issues that people have been, discussing for decades. And so it's exciting to me that there's so much energy about it now, that it's even showing up, like I said, in those conversations on Main Street, with, everyday folks. So I think that there is an energy and an excitement about it. We at GoDaddy obviously are committed to it. We're committed to doing our part for helping to sustain this world for generations to come. And I think just individuals like me and those of us in other companies really, truly dedicated to this work, I think that's also where I gained some inspiration.
So the two, let's just talk about the two big hats you wear, on the legal side and on the corporate sustainability ESG side. Which issues, when you go to bed at night, there's a lot to be proud of here, and you're doing so much important and great work. What, though, keeps you up at night? What has you worried? And from which hats are you wearing does that worry come from? I
would say I try not to worry, first of all. I was raised by a father who always said, don't worry, it's not really very effective. But I do like to think and come up with strategies. I like your dad. He's one of the best people. But I certainly spend a lot of time thinking about really, I think, the corporate sustainability and ESG work, because it's an enterprise-wide platform. We have a tremendous opportunity to impact so many stakeholders. My legal operations and legal training work, it's also incredibly important, but it's a little bit more specific to the department as opposed to the company and to like external stakeholders. So yeah, it's how do we really continue to grow our Empower program and truly reach more entrepreneurs and help them change the global economy? Like that would be phenomenal.
Right.
We're making a good dent in that, but keeping that conversation going, I think, is really important. And really thinking about how to pivot that to level up not just the entrepreneurs we serve, but also the nonprofits with whom we partner. So we do a lot of thinking and strategizing about that.
It's a relatively new industry, this industry of sustainability, ESG, as you said earlier, this alphabet soup of very important topics that need to be addressed by organizations and corporations, not just good government. How do you, since you pride yourself on your organizational skills, how do you evolve your mission in corporate sustainability and ESG without the zigging and zagging? Because there's so much, as you say, so much ever-changing information coming our way, and so many new rules and regs that are constantly we're being pressured with. How do we evolve it gently so there's a commonality and a string that you could follow, instead of the zigging and zagging, which some organizations and corporations find themselves doing, and then they find themselves actually less effective?
So in terms of helping GoDaddy's strategy with corporate sustainability and ESG, in light of all the fact that there's lots of changes and competing demands, I really rely on my experience from being a lawyer. So I worked, with many clients and had to understand the nuances of laws and the fact that the laws could change based on who was sitting in the White House. So every 4 years, sort of having to pivot. So keeping an eye on the long-term strategy, but also understanding like the immediate challenges. And so for us, I think what's really critical for us to focus on is what our company's mission is, and also what our long-term strategy is, and make sure that what we're doing with corporate sustainability and ESG is embedded, right? Like it takes a village. It takes folks from all over the company to help us be awesome stewards of corporate sustainability and ESG. So to me, that's the magic. And so also, though, keeping a really close ear to what's happening in the regulatory environment, what's happening in industry, making sure we surround ourselves with awesome resources, so that like really good lawyers, awesome consultants that are helping us to really think about what those issues are, and making sure that we do pivot when we need to pivot, but that we're also keeping our eye on that long-term strategy.
You said earlier, we talked about your 2022 report that came out in April. Is that an annual? Is that an annual report that you try to put out every April?
That's right. Yep, it's our third annual, so we'll be working on our next report already.
and they all live on the GoDaddy.com, GoDaddy for Good portion of your website, right?
That's right. And you also can find it on our investor relations page.
That's wonderful. So, Cami, let's go back a little bit to your 18-year or 22-year-old self. If you could go back, because there's a lot of young people that watch your show around the world that want to be the next Cami Hoskins, and thank God, because we need more Cami Hoskins in this world. But what good advice could you give your 18-year-old or 22-year-old self that our young listeners could take to heart to get them on the journey to become our next leaders in ESG, diversity, inclusion, and sustainability?
I would recommend that those young people just be keen observers right now. So really learning about what's going on in our environment, in our communities, the challenges that our communities are facing, whether it be environmental, social, and understanding sort of what makes those things happen. Because I think to be an exceptional corporate sustainability or ESG professional, we really need to have our pulse on those things. We need to understand what the issues are so that we can help our organizations navigate those issues. And so just start there, just being really curious, and then take those opportunities to network with other individuals. So whenever I talk to anybody who's interested in breaking to any field, it's always about networking and who you know. So take those opportunities to check out conferences, to attend trainings where people are talking about these concepts. My understanding is more actual formal higher educational institutions are doing, actual training. And so that's certainly helpful. And I think there's a huge opportunity in greenhouse gas accounting. So just sort of understanding how to level oneself up in the technical aspect of it as well, I think is really great. And to follow their passion, because I think we really need people who are of pure motivation in this work and really are working to do what's best for organizations and for our communities. And so following their passion and following their heart, I think served them very well.
I love it. So you're 3 years into your tenure at GoDaddy, and you're relatively very young still, and you have a long, and GoDaddy's a big and growing company. What are you most excited about in the years to come? What are you planning? Can you talk about that's got you really excited about the future?
Absolutely, just double or tripling down on the corporate sustainability and ESG work. I feel like there's so much potential for our team to just continue to make a tremendous impact. So we're not babies on the journey, but we're still like kind of relatively new. And so there's just tremendous opportunity to help GoDaddy navigate these waters and really continue to be a leader in those spaces. So part of it is continuing to invest in our Empower by GoDaddy program. I truly think that is a very special program, and not a lot of corporations are doing that kind of thing. I think part of what is so special about Empower is that we rely on our employee volunteers to do a lot of the education for our entrepreneurs who are in that program. So we can pull people from different parts of the business and give them direct exposure to the very people that we serve, and help those individuals benefit from those employees' expertise. And it's just this amazing cycle of continuing to get investment and support. So I'm really excited for what we have cooking with Empower, which you'll have to stay tuned because it's still cooking, but I'm very excited about what we have planned.
I love it. I love it. And Cami, I've really enjoyed our conversation today, and I want you to be able to come back on and talk about any new highlights or anything you want to talk about with regards to what you're doing, both on the legal side of GoDaddy and also, of course, your head of corporate sustainability and ESG side of GoDaddy. You're always welcome back on the Impact Podcast. For our listeners and viewers, to find Cami and her colleagues and all the impactful and important work they're doing at GoDaddy in ESG and corporate sustainability and diversity inclusion, please go to www.godaddy.com or www.godaddy.com/GoDaddy for good. Cami Hoskins, you are making the world a better place. And for that, I'm very grateful. You're making a huge impact with your colleagues. Thank you for being a wonderful guest today on the Impact Podcast. I hope we get to meet one day, and you're always welcome here anytime you want to come back on.
Thank you so much, John. It has been a true pleasure meeting you. And thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to share our story.
This edition of the Impact Podcast is brought to you by Engage. Engage is a digital booking platform revolutionizing the talent booking industry. With thousands of athletes, celebrities, entrepreneurs, and business leaders, Engage is the go-to spot for booking talent, for speeches, custom experiences, live streams, and much more. For more information on Engage or to book talent today, visit letsengage.com. This edition of the Impact Podcast is brought to you by ERI. ERI has a mission to protect people, the planet, and your privacy, and is the largest fully integrated IT and electronics asset disposition provider and cybersecurity-focused hardware destruction company in the United States, and maybe even the world. For more information on how ERI can help your business properly dispose of outdated electronic hardware devices, please visit eridirect.com.